amores. Welcome to today's episode of Tea Time with Nori. Hi. So happy we're live. How y'all doing? How's your spirit doing today? How are you feeling? In today's in today's training video, I wanted to share with you something that I learned recently that I think you will find very helpful in your healing process. Um, have you ever, before I start, I want to ask you a few questions. Have you ever felt like something happened to you? You couldn't necessarily explain what happened to you or how it happened to you. But once you walked away from that experience that happened to you, you felt like your view of the world was a little bit different. Perhaps you engaged with someone and that person might have lied to you and that really hurt your feelings. And after you walk away from that experience, you felt like, oh, people are liars, or people just lie all the time, or people are not to be trusted. Have you ever felt something like that, where you've had an experience and after that experience, your whole perspective on the world kind of changed a little bit because of how painful it was? Well, today we're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about what happens when we have those experiences in our lives that change the way we look at the world. Because that, my friends, is called an emotional wound. Anytime you experience something negative that left you feeling some type of way, that left you feeling attacked, that left you convinced that people are not to be trusted, that people are evil, or that people are not who they say they are, and that left you feeling like you had to look at everybody differently, that is an emotional wound. And I want to talk to you about what happens when these emotional wounds happen to us and we try to make sense of what's going on, because something really dangerous happens. And I want to share that with you today to help you in your healing journey. If we're meeting for the first time, hi, I'm Nori. I help millennial women that are feeling stuck heal from their emotional wounds so that they can feel inner peace going into any situation. Okay, so let's get into this topic today, where I'm going to be sharing the most dangerous part of our emotional wounds. So when I was a little girl, my mother moved to the United States in search for a better life. I talked about this in a previous video that's titled "The Emotional Wound I Struggle with the Most." And at the time, adult Nori understands that my mother was looking for more opportunities for us, for herself, for my siblings, for myself. And she made this decision because she knew it was the best decision for her, the quote unquote right decision for her. And as an adult, I totally understand this and I can wrap my mind around it. And I can even understand why she did it. Like, I probably would have done the same thing. However, as a child, I didn't have this understanding that I have now as an adult. As a child, I didn't know about looking for a better life or, making things better for the family, of caring about my siblings. As a child, I was just trying to get attention from my mother. And when she moved to the United States, I saw her as leaving me behind. I saw that as me being rejected. I saw that as she not wanting me. Now, why did I do that? Why, as a kid, did I associate my mom looking to make a decision to give us more opportunities to her now wanting me and in a way rejecting me? Why did that happen? Well, because when I was a child, I was trying to figure out what the hell was going on. I was trying to understand what was happening and why she had to leave, because I didn't understand all these other things. And in my quest to make peace with that, I found myself making these reasons and believing something really dangerous. And that is the one thing about our emotional wounds. As if experiencing an emotional wound, something painful in your life, wasn't enough, as if having an experience that really hurt you and impacted you on a psychological level wasn't enough, which already sucks. What happens to us is that after we have that experience, we try to figure out what's going on because we don't understand what's happening. And when we try to figure out what's going on, we start believing a certain lie. And for me, the lie I believed was that I wasn't enough, that I needed to achieve more in order for my mom to want me or for my parents not to reject me. Now, this was the only way in my head that I can rationalize what was going on. This was the only way in my head that I can understand and make peace with what was happening. And it wasn't true. That wasn't the case. My mom was doing this because it was to help me have a better life. So she was doing it out of the goodness of her heart in a way, and it really was hurtful for her to do that too. But at the time when I didn't have that information, I made up my own reason to justify what took place. And that reason became that I wasn't good enough, that there was something wrong with me and that I was damaged, and that the parents didn't like kids that were damaged. Parents didn't like kids that didn't achieve enough. So that took me on this journey of like wanting to be extremely independent, wanting to be someone that achieved like crazy. I mean, I have 2 bachelor degrees, I have a master's. My mom doesn't even know what I really do. As far as like school was concerned, she didn't know what I majored, none of that stuff. But I wanted to prove myself to her so badly that I went and tried to do everything I could to make sure I was like the poster child, right? And that really impacted how I saw the world, because even though I was a 20-something woman, I was still that little girl trying to measure up to her mom and show her that she was worthy of her mother's love, of her mother's attention, and of her mother's you know, time. So that's what happens to a lot of us. And that is the most dangerous part about an emotional wound. As if the wound itself wasn't enough, is the lie that we walk away believing, is the lie that we convince ourselves of when we're trying to make sense of what's going on. It's not like we don't want to, it's not like we want to make believe, it's not like we want to put ourselves in this painful position. Is that we're trying to understand. We don't have the information, or if we have the information, we can't really grasp ourselves around it. So we end up making reasons as to why this is going on. And when we make up these reasons for what's going on, it tends to be us. We blame ourselves. So I want to also share with you how this negative experiences that we have, how did they shape our mindset, and how did they shift us from where we are right now into a different space? The first thing that happens when you experience something negative that leaves you hurting at a psychological level, where it changes how you look at the world, is that becomes your new filter to look at the world. Before, you might have felt like, for my example, before, I didn't necessarily feel like I was rejected, or I didn't know what rejection even was. But once I had that as experience as a child, I suddenly began to look at the world like that. I remember in my teenage years, me feeling like I had to be really defensive with people. I didn't really let a lot of people in because I was afraid that they would reject me. So before they could reject me, I was going to reject them. I was rude. I was disrespectful at times. I was really sweet when I wanted to, but I knew how to keep people away enough to my own terms, because I was protecting myself. I was protecting myself from other people emotionally. The second thing that happens to us is that we believe everything that happens to us confirms our lie. So when I believed the lie that, I wasn't good enough, when I started applying to college and I started getting letters of rejection from, literally called letters of rejection from schools, I started feeling like, man, this is a confirmation. I'm not good enough. Like, I'm not good enough for these schools. I need to do more. I'm not doing enough. And I would like blame myself. If I only would have done more, if in high school I would have been more serious, if I would have taken pre-calc a little bit more serious and not gotten a C, maybe I wouldn't be in this situation. And I would blame myself over and over again, because I was like, these schools are rejecting me. I am not good enough for these schools. I'm not good enough for everyone. So it really became a confirmation to me. Like, I knew it. I knew that I wasn't good enough. I knew that I wasn't, worthy, because these schools are confirming that I'm not. So that's the second thing that happens to us. We start to look at situations that happen in our lives, or occurrences that happen in our lives, as confirmation that our lies are true, that we're not good enough, that we're not worthy, that we are to be rejected. The third thing that happens is that we define our self-worth by this lie. This lie becomes so embedded in your life that you start to define yourself by it. So for me, the way that manifested when I used to deal with guys, it would be a lot about like, how many guys are trying to talk to me? That would define how much I felt I had self-worth. I would define myself by how much attention I would get from people, from friends, from family. Like when I was younger, I would like try to talk to guys, and I didn't want to talk to them, but I wanted them to talk to me. So that's the thing that I was into. Like, I wanted to feel like if I'm getting this attention, it must mean that I'm popping. It must be that I'm good. And that's that's what happens to us. That's how our mindset shift. We begin to define ourselves by that lie. And the lie that I believe was that if I'm getting attention, it means that I am loved. And if I'm not getting attention, it means that I am not loved. So every time I would get attention, whether it was the quote unquote right attention or wrong attention, it didn't matter because I was getting the attention and I felt like, well, some attention is better than no attention, even if the attention wasn't healthy. So that's another way that our mindset shift when we start believing these lies, when we are faced with a situation that, hurt us at a psychological level or really left us feeling like people are not, are not to be trusted. The fourth thing that happens to us is that we begin to blame ourselves for everything. Every time something happens, I will blame myself for it, whether it has something to do with me or not. Like if I was dealing with a guy and he will be like, yo, I'm cutting you, like I'm not talking to you no more. Like I will blame myself for that at the beginning, like, and things like that. And I will also feel like it's my fault that I'm not getting the attention that I want. Like it didn't, like if I felt like somebody needed to give me more attention, I would suddenly feel like that was my fault that I wasn't getting that attention. That was my responsibility. And I would blame myself for that all the time. Like I would blame myself for the type of person I was engaging with, the type of guys I was with. And, and even there were some situations that, to be quite frankly with you, were my fault, but it didn't matter because I would blame myself. If I would have known better, if I would have done better, if I would have said this, if I would have said that, I would just replay those events in my head over and over again and try to like analyze with my girlfriends, like, yo, girl, what if, what do you think he meant by this? What do you think he meant by that? And you really utilize that to kind of feed my brain with these things to kind of feed my lie that, yeah, I wasn't worthy. I wasn't good enough. I wasn't even thinking that it was them. I was convinced that it was me. And the fifth thing that happens when we have a negative experience that completely challenges our mindset and shifts the way we look at the world is that it becomes a part of our character. Now you stop believing that you go from I am good enough to I'm not good enough. You go from I am worthy of love to I deserve to be rejected. You go from someone will love me unconditionally to they will abandon me at the first chance they get. So when you start to have these thoughts about yourself in a negative way, you have to really think about where are these thoughts coming from? Like, is this really true? You want to challenge those thoughts. But when we are in these type of situations where that pain that we're feeling from the experiences that we have is so overwhelming, it's difficult to do that. And that's when you have to be really, really careful about any experience that you have that leaves you in a quote unquote negative space, because there are things that you start to believe from that experience. And when you are a child, you have less defenses up to protect you against those beliefs because you don't know, you don't understand what it means to have a better life or to look for opportunities or to take care of your siblings or to be a mother that, equally tries to provide. Like you don't know what none of that stuff means. So as a child, you're literally like at a loss. You're trying to make sense of it, everything. But because you only have limited information, you blame yourself. You think that it's you. You are the reason that this happened. And that is something really dangerous. And we need to be careful about that because those things aren't true. But so many things change because of that lie. So it's really important that not only do you reject that lie, but that you heal from that wound, that you practice that self-forgiveness. Because if you don't do that, you're going to continue to operate out of that space and things are just going to go on a snowball of a mess. Okay. So I wanted to share with you, how do you spot these lies so that you can walk away with some tools today on how you can make that happen? So for me and for my students, the thing that has really helped them is to really pay attention to the intention of why we do things. Every time you do something, there's a reason you're doing that thing. You know when you're doing something out of fear. You know when you're doing something because you're afraid that people are not going to like you. You know when you're doing something because you genuinely love it and it brings you so much joy. And you also know when you're doing something because you are trying to hold somebody's attention. You know the intention behind the reasons why you do the things that you do. So every time you do something, you should really pay attention to what's your intention behind doing that. Are you doing this because you really care about it, because you really want to do it, because it feeds your soul? Or are you doing this because you're afraid of missing the attention of other people, of not getting the approval of other people, of having people judge you and treat you differently? What is that? And be honest with yourself, because that's the only way this works. If you're lying to yourself, then this is not going to work. You got to be honest with yourself. If you want to heal from it, you got to be honest with yourself. That's just the reality. The second thing you want to ask yourself, is this rooted in fear? Are you doing something because you're afraid? Are you doing something because you're afraid you're going to lose something? Are you doing something because you're afraid you're going to gain something? Like, why are you doing this thing? And then asking yourself, what am I afraid of? What am I really afraid of when I'm doing this thing? What is the thing that I fear the most? Because that's going to give you insight into where your healing needs to happen. That's going to give you insight into what kind of lies you are believing so that you can begin to unpack them and get to a place where you don't have to give in to those lies. And the last question I will ask is, where did I learn to be afraid of this? What was the experience that taught you that you should be afraid of being rejected? What was the experience that taught you that you should be afraid of speaking your mind? What was the experience that taught you that you should be afraid of, walking away from a relationship that doesn't serve you? Like, what's that? And then you want to utilize that information to get to the root of those lies. And the more you understand that, it's going to take you some time, but the more you are able to be present and understand that, the closer you're going to get to being able to let go of those lies so that you can create more room for who you really are and not the person that you think you need to be. So that is what I had for you today. If you need help with any of this, if you need support, get into the lie that you've learned to believe as a result of your negative experience, hit me up in my DMs or chat with me on iamhealthyfit.com/schedule. I'm like all over the place. And let's set some time and let's talk, or you can just message me directly. And I love to communicate with you and see how I can help. And you're not alone. This can be really an interesting process, and it could be really lonely and overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. So have an amazing rest of your day, and I will see you in our next training. Hasta luego.